All right, everyone. We have yet another one of our interviews today. This time it's going to be in animation slash film. I think we'll probably touch a little there. And we have Meghann Artist. Hi, thanks for
Hi.
being with us.
Thank you so much for
Um,
having me.
mhm. Have you done any work that maybe my students might have seen or come across?
Yeah, I definitely I like when I was working, I worked for Warner Brothers and
Hmm.
Sesame Street, so I did a movie called Curious George. It was a while back. It's with
Sure.
who was Will Ferrell. Am I getting that right? And Drew Barrymore. And then I worked on like the Jack Johnson
Was Will Ferrell the man in the yellow hat or whatever it was? It's been a while
yeah.
since I've read that book, but yeah.
Let me tell your students, I just got a puppy 3 days ago, and so this is the first time she's barked all day. Hold on.
Sure, no worries.
Of course she's gonna bark right when we start,
Of course, that's
I yeah,
Murphy's Law,
so
of course, right?
yeah, so Will Ferrell is yeah, I'm trying to think if I got the Will. I always get him and Colin Farrell. No, it's Will Ferrell. Yeah, he was the man in the yellow hat. And Jack Johnson was one of the singer, like he did a
Oh,
lot of
nice.
the yeah,
Yeah,
and so
music in it.
I got to work on his music video after the production of that. I've worked on let's see, I'm trying to think of some of these are a while back when I
Sure.
but like Bix Pix was a stop motion house out in California where I worked on Holidays, the Christmas that almost didn't happen. It was a
Okay.
stop motion. I think it went direct to TV, but it was really cute with Fred Savage
Oh, nice.
and
Is
then
this like a Hallmark type movie or
yeah,
something?
something like that. But I think the biggest thing that I worked on, for the longest time was Sesame Street. So
Hmm.
that was a big part of, I worked in the digital, like back when they did CD-ROMs. And
Oh,
so,
wow. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I hadn't even gone to animation school yet, but I went to film school and I was obsessed with animation. It's kind of self-taught. And so they would let me
Mhm.
do the little animated payoffs. So if a kid
Sure.
got something right, and then I would do my weird animation, which I used to be obsessed with animating food and just different types of so they would get something right and that would happen. And then yeah, and then I went to grad school and got my
Nice.
animation, and then I went back to Sesame Street and worked in the green screen and visual effects and started animating for their website. So it went along with the TV show.
All right. Well, so usually I start with when I talk with animators about where their love of animation. But for you, why don't we make it where does your love of maybe animation, or it could be film, or it could be TV? Where does that come from?
Well, I grew up in a very small town in Iowa, and I think for some reason movies were the escape. You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
I was obsessed with. We lived by like a forest, so you could go do your thing there. But then I also lived by a really small movie shack place where I ended up working when I turned like 16.
Okay.
So I would love to just go up, get the VHS, and come back and watch it as many times as I could,
Mhm.
and just
Right.
so I guess that I don't know. I just loved watching movies. It was kind of like the
Sure.
more I could watch, the better.
Okay. So you have a love of movies, and then where does that take you for college or education?
Yeah, well, that's a good question because I remember getting the choice. I had to stay in Iowa. That was kind of the rule of my
Okay.
parents for my undergrad. And so I remember going, oh, which one's the farthest one away? Not that I needed to get away from them, but I just thought, independence and all that.
Right,
So
right. Yeah.
I went
General
to
18-year-old kind of.
I went to University of Iowa, and I thought everybody was supposed to be a business major because that's my family, like they're in
Right.
business or nursing or something like that. I don't even know and so I did not like business. And then I didn't
Sure.
realize they had a film program there, and I was like, wait, people can get a degree here. And so it was one of those that it kind of found me, and I just remember I fell in love with it. I loved
Mhm.
creating my own stuff. I will say the teachers, the TAs, the professors were just really, they turned into mentors, and it's kind of one of those things. It's like, you know, I
Sure.
I just fell in love with it at that moment, and I was like, how can I make a living out of this? And so that's what I started to try to figure out.
Okay. So you graduate from University of Iowa. Where did you go from there?
Where did I go from there? Oh. I got on a bus in Iowa
Hmm.
City and it dropped me off in New York City and I knew nobody.
Okay.
And so, I mean, I have stories for days.
Dropped you off in Penn Station. I'm from New York, so it's
Oh,
like
you are? Okay. Yes, it did in Penn Station. It dropped me off. And so, stayed in a hostel for about a week and then I had to get out of the hostel because crazy things were happening. And so then I found a crazy apartment. And it's all good stories. And I just happened to somebody from Iowa knew somebody that was working at Sesame Street at the
okay.
time. And it was like really, I remember having my interview and the guy said, I told him I love to animate. And he's like, well, if you love to animate, you're probably not going to like this job because it was a lot of lip sync. Like it was taking Big
Okay.
Birds.
Yeah, yeah.
It's back when CD-ROMs, like every single name you could think of, Theo, Theodora, da 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 da, like Big Bird would have to say it. So I'd have to like
Okay.
lip sync all those things. And
Sorry,
I
so this was like for a CD-ROM game or
yeah,
something, or
yeah,
okay,
yep.
got it.
So I just did that and I spent a lot of hours, but I mean, the people that I met there were
Hmm.
just absolutely, they became my tribe and it was just an amazing time.
Nice.
Um, yeah. And so, things happen. I feel like they did layoffs and I ended up working at Nickelodeon for a while. And then at night I would or not edit, I would digitize. And that's back when you download, like you'd get
Right.
ingest all the material for Dateline. So I kind of had all these jobs like here and there doing some fun stuff.
But sorry, what were you doing for Nickelodeon? You were
Nickelodeon, I did a couple different things, but I remember I hadn't gone to animation school yet. So I was like
okay,
kind of a self-taught and doing some special Sesame Street let me do some special stuff until they had some layoffs, like
right.
the payoffs. But I worked for Blue's Clues, but
Okay.
I was the director's assistant. So I wasn't
Hmm.
animating. I wish I was animating, but I was seeing how everything worked, like how to put the show
Right.
together. And I was working for Dave Palmer, and he was just such a talented, artist and director. So it was really interesting to meet and then meet the cast and all that and just see how a show like that worked. I also worked for something. Do you remember Noggin? Do you remember a long time ago,
Oh,
Noggin?
the channel you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that channel.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
one
it
of my,
doesn't exist anymore. I think it died
no.
out in
Yeah.
2010-ish or something.
But it was part of Nickelodeon. And what's
Oh,
wild
nice.
about it is it's funny to see like social media today and like how we interact. But back in the
Uh,
day, I would the student or not students, kids would send in messages that they wanted going over the show, whatever the show was.
right, yeah,
And
yeah.
so we would make sure it wasn't anything bad and and
Right.
and
You had
and
like a
then
live chat feature kind of
yeah,
thing.
so they would be
Yeah.
at home and they're like, "Oh my gosh, what I said just went up," while you're watching the
I
show.
do remember that. I mean, this is dated, but like I remember MTV in the late
Yeah.
90s. There were
Yeah.
like they would do something where like they would play music videos and like people could kind of it was like supposed to be like a live chat room kind of
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
And of course, people were like making fun of the video or whatever it was, or like saying how much they hated their ex-girlfriend or whatever, or
Yeah, we
boyfriend
had
or
to be
whatever.
really careful because this was a younger
Yeah,
crowd that none
yeah,
of that stuff was, so we were kind of the gatekeepers to that. So anyway, really interesting job starting out. Like I was PA for a motorcycle commercial. I was this and
yeah.
or
Right, right,
reality show. Like, you answer these ads and you're like, I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out right now.
right.
But I was living in New York and I was loving it. The problem is 9/11 happened, and so then trying to figure out, and I working for Dateline, and so I mean I got a lot of work that I mean it
Mhm.
wasn't great because I was watching all this stuff that nobody would want, you know what I mean? Like so it
Right,
was
yeah,
like
that's got to be
kind of
hard.
yeah, I was questioning what's going on. I want to make art again and all that. So that's when I decided to go back to grad school.
Okay, and so it sounds like you went to grad school for animation. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I did. And I went out to California, where I
Uh,
guess you are. So,
damn.
yeah.
And so you go to grad school, you get your MA in animation. Where'd you go, Cal Arts or
No, I went to UCLA and I got my
UCLA?
MFA. Yeah. So I was there for a long time. I kind of would stop and work in the industry for a little
Sure.
bit after I got all my classes. And then I was just had to finish that last thesis. You know how that works. So,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. So where do you go after you get your grad degree?
Well, that's where I started working. I was teaching a little bit at Loyola Marymount at night, and then I was working at Warner Brothers during the day,
Okay.
or so it was like I was kind of double duty. and I worked at a couple other shows. It was doing visual effects at, a
Mhm.
couple places. And then I got a call from Sesame Street in New York again, and they're like, we're building a green screen room. They knew what I'd been up to. I'd been sharing my
Mhm.
projects with them as
Oh, nice.
the past 5 years, and I'd become very, I was close with everybody. And they just said, we need somebody to run the green screen studio and, work with the director and the puppeteers that come in, the Muppets, whatever you want to call them, and then
Right.
make the movies that will live on our website. And so it was kind of a dream job. It was like, I don't have to think long about this. Yes, please sign me up.
Sure.
So I went back
So you were
there.
making content directly for their website?
Yeah, and
Okay.
usually and
It
sometimes it
feels
would
like a
come.
very late aughts, early 2010 kind of job.
Yeah, yes, yes, yes. It was 2000, yeah, 7, 8,
That sounds
9.
about right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it would match. Sometimes it would match with the show,
Right.
or sometimes we were doing other things where we were creating games they had 3D interstitials with some of the
Mhm.
characters. And then we would take those and help make those into a playable game
Oh, nice.
so we had
Yeah.
that, and then we were actually making videos that lived on the homepage, and then we would actually have shoots, and we would bring all the Muppets and the puppeteers, and we'd make
Oh,
content.
awesome.
So it's cool.
Awesome. So, so you, what anime you were, okay. So, what animation were you doing for Warner Brothers? Just to be clear, I think I
That
missed
I
that.
was doing
Or were you doing other kinds of work? Oh,
lighting
lighting.
and compositing.
Okay.
And
For
I
film
mostly
or for animation?
well, it was a 3D film, so
Oh,
I
3D
would
film.
get, yeah, so it would go down the,
Right.
yeah, and I would get it after a certain, and then I'd put it all together with a team, and we'd put all the lighting effect because the director had very specific, like in After Effects, it was like almost like a stroke glow light, and then there would be these 3D, it would look flat, but some of it was created in 3D, so you'd have to put it back together and make sure, and everything was, you have to make it look right. So,
Well, can you touch on that a little bit?
yeah.
From I mean, from a sort of post-production kind of effect. So, what was your as a lighter, what's your job like for doing that kind of work? Like, my students have a basic understanding of After Effects, but can you explain a little bit what that might look like, your day-to-day kind of job?
Yeah, it was a really great job. Again, I was very lucky. I had a fantastic team. The director had a very specific vision, and you can imagine,
Mm.
let's say a 90-minute film, we're getting shots where we're working on, a 1 to 7 seconds of a shot in a movie, and so
Right.
but I'm getting this shot, Sarah's getting this shot, and Claire's getting that
Sure.
shot. So we have to make it, and she might get the tail of mine, and I might get the heads of her, so we have to
Right.
figure out how to make it very cohesive. And the director has a very specific vision, and we have
Sure.
to, so you're cutting it all together, and you're going to dailies every day, and you're looking at your shots when you turn them in, and
Can you
you're
explain what
like,
a daily is really quick to
oh,
make
yes. So
it?
we would go into a theater, and if once you had your shots and you turned them in, and we would watch them as a team and see
Sure.
what was working and what wasn't working. And it was usually your animatic, which is your story reel, which is it's like your film is done twice, right? In animation, you do
Right.
it with the storyboard panels, and then you replace the shots that you've completed, and you kind of are like slowly building the film, covering the rough paint, I guess you could say, right? And so we
Mhm.
would see if the shots worked together, or if screen direction got really weird, or if maybe the arm popped off, but you didn't notice when you were doing
Right.
this. So the director would be there, and he would be giving notes, and sometimes it'd be like your final. Yeah, it passes, because after you'd kind of get into a groove, and but a lot of times, I mean, he could just see things that we didn't see, and it was really beautiful to watch somebody that was that, focused on a project. And so would give us very specific notes. He would also walk around for all the
Mm.
departments. And then, yeah, we would work on those shots and turn them in. And it would just be kind of rinse and repeat until we finished the movie. And so there
And
was
you
a
did
team
that
of us.
you
Yeah.
did that work in After Effects or
Yes. After
okay.
Effects.
Nice.
Yep.
Sorry, I didn't mean to disrupt your conversation. So you did that and then you went to do green screen and post-production, so you were green screening the puppet work for
Yeah.
to make videos to put onto the Sesame Street website or the KQE or PBS website? Is that kind of
Yeah, it was the sesameworkshop.org or so it just lived on there. There was a video when you started and it
Hmm.
would talk about a topic and it would tell the kids where to go and it
Sure.
would play a fun skit. So whatever we would bring, let's say Elmo in or Oscar or whatever, we had a green screen and a blue screen. So we'd figure out what, and then it was written by the director and I was kind of like the technical director and then I would put it
Mhm.
together. And so we would kind of work together. Sometimes I would storyboard it, and then a couple months later they would come in and shoot. And it was on green screen or blue screen because then we were able to create with artists like the background and all the props that they
Right.
interact with. Or if they throw the letter E up, then we've got a crazy little
Right.
letter
Right.
E. We gave us a lot of freedom to create, sink and what floats and what's this and what's that. So we would have
Right.
props in their hands, but we would also be able to create the background. And so it was just a small little studio,
Sure.
but it was perfect because all you need is one arm, a right hand and a left
Right.
hand, because they usually have two puppeteers for
Right.
each
Right.
character. And we would shoot them individually sometimes and then put them together in a movie, even if they were interacting with multiple Muppets on a page.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So you do that. So when do you start doing your own kind of independent film, would you say?
Well, I would say I was able to, going back to grad school was
Uh,
really, that was, I just was like, "Ugh, I just want to make my own stuff because I was working on other
right.
people's stuff or
Sure.
helping people make and New York, but I loved it because the energy was just really great, and just the people I met. But then I just wanted to make my own stuff and be around creative people. And so that LA, so sorry, UCLA, I was able to start doing that. I made a handful of films, but and they did okay in the festival circuit, which was I think
Mhm.
was really helpful. That's one of the things that I kind of was able to go to festivals, meet people, but
Sure.
it just you start to kind of make a list of the places that you've screened at. And then from there, I decided after I had been working in the industry and all that, I was like, I kind of miss academia. I kind of miss school. I miss being around all that creative energy and
Mhm.
making things. And lo and behold, I was very lucky and I got a teaching job at DePaul University in Chicago.
Mhm.
And the one little, I don't know if people know this, but like if a chemistry teacher, you think about what do they have to do to keep their job? Well, they have to probably write books or do stuff or write papers
Right.
about chemistry.
Sure.
Well, a film professor or animation professor has to make projects that are seen by their peers to kind of keep their job and kind of get out there and also just to be relevant and figure out when we're teaching, how do we keep teaching stuff that we've done it so we're not just saying, oh, this would be cool if you did this. So it was where I'm at DePaul. They were very, very helpful for making these things. They had grants, they had big projects, and so that's really where I got to make some of my bigger projects that had bigger
Nice.
budgets, and they got noticed. That's where the everything kind of started on those bigger scale films, and yeah,
Hmm. Great. So, I mean, can you tell my students a little bit how working on maybe your own project where you're kind of the main person in charge versus,
yeah.
you did all this other work, but you weren't necessarily the director or something. So can you talk about maybe how that was different for you or what challenges or different
Sure.
responsibilities you had, when you were running your own production or.
Totally. Here, let me just turn this dinging off because it'll keep going. Well, the biggest thing is I knew that I wanted to direct
Mhm.
after some time. Let's see, how do I say do not disturb? There we go. Is that I love the idea of thinking, like writing the idea, coming up with the world, and then
Mhm.
actually executing it.
Okay.
And so I kind of liked all of that. I wanted to be, I love collaborating though. It's not like I'm like my way is the highway, but I
Right,
love
right.
that being able to find those creative voices and putting them together and then working with people I love. And that's what I felt like once I started to go get the scale of my projects got a little bit bigger and I had a little bit more control and I just really liked directing. And
Sure.
I think to answer your question, I once I was in the director's chair or whatever directing, and I fell in love with it even more than I thought I could. And
Mhm.
I've enjoyed doing it professionally, and I've enjoyed doing it on my independent projects, and so yeah.
For my students who are maybe, so this might be used in my post-production class, what are some of the challenges of a film that an indie film person has versus maybe if you're working for someone else on a commercial or, because there's different kinds of,
Oh yeah.
you know,
Well, on an indie film, you're pretty much making all the decisions. At some point, like if you need a little extra money, you're
right.
the one who's coming up with that money, right? Like, and so,
Right.
um, but, and yeah, I'm trying to think and having a commercial, like when I shoot a commercial, I have somebody else found the wardrobe person, somebody else
Sure.
found the makeup person, and somebody
Right.
else is worried about catering coming in. Not that I'm
Sure.
necessarily
Right.
worried about that, but it's
Right.
like on a smaller scale, my husband's a producer, and
Mhm.
so he's talking to me at night about how something didn't work out or something like that. So, um, yeah, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but
No, I think I just different. I guess what I was trying to get at was sort of like different roles or different what kind of to expect that's different from working on a smaller, more
yeah.
independent production versus like maybe a commercial where there's already a budget set in place by the client or whatever it is or something like that.
You know what's interesting also that I found, and this is just from my experience, but I've
Mhm.
done commercials in the United States and then in the UK. And like for your own independent projects, you are from beginning to end. You're working with the editor, you're sitting with them every step of the
Sure.
way, which is I really love doing that. Um, in the States, I found just the commercials I worked on, and I've talked to other people, is that a lot of times, like, the editor, once they get the footage, the editor's working like with the producer or the clients or whatever. I mean, the director in some ways will have some say, but most of the
Right.
time they're kind of, you did your job, you directed, good job. You know what I mean? And
Right.
then in the UK is they definitely, at least I don't know, the one that I did over there was a big visual effects and my kind of crazy animation style. So, but they wanted me in the whole process. So I loved
Oh,
it,
nice.
but
Yeah.
it went on for months, but it was great. So
Mhm. Great. So where does that leave you now? Like, do you see yourself, are you sort of focusing yourself on academia, or are you trying to do some of your own more independent movies, or where are you right now with what you're trying to accomplish?
I'm always doing both because I think if you're not, then
Right.
so right now I'm finishing up a festival run for a film. It's actually much different than the animated films that I've made. I kind of
Okay.
took I think it's my time from Sesame Street, but also I've always made live action animated films, so like animating humans, creating
Mhm.
worlds that are really big in scope but are very whimsical
Right.
and made up. So building these huge sets and all that kind of stuff. But what was I going to say? The one that I did just recently is called Stronghold, and it's a live action drama, and it's working with a kid, and that's
Oh,
what I really
nice.
wanted to do. And so
Right.
it's not on my page yet, but it will be shortly, I'm sure, because it's just got another festival or two to go in. And so that's what I worked on for the last couple of years. And
Okay.
now I'm working with the same writer with that, and we're working on a feature. We were just in the Chicago International um, Lab, where you work on it with mentors for a year.
Okay.
And it was just a really lovely experience. So I don't know. I guess I don't, I'm just going to be making things. And whether that's,
Right.
sometimes you get stuck in pre-production and writing and writing treatments and lookbooks and all that kind of stuff. And then
Mhm.
sometimes you're, all of a sudden in production and you get a commercial and,
Right.
you're shooting 2 weeks later and you're like, wow, I didn't, a month ago, I didn't know I'd be doing here. Didn't know I'd be in Bulgaria. You know what I mean? Shooting a
Right.
commercial. Yeah. So it's kind of fun. You kind of just have to roll with it. But I mean, I also have a day job, and
Right.
so I'm teaching. So yeah,
And as a teacher, do you teach directing or
I
film editing, or kind of a mix of stuff, or?
I'm a mix of stuff, but I definitely teach production, mostly animation right now.
Mhm.
But I did transition about a year and a half, 2 years ago to like I'm an associate dean of production. So I kind of
Okay.
I work with art. Cinespace Film Studios that is a part of DePaul. They have
Okay.
it's just like the real deal. So the students have classes out there, and
Oh,
then
nice.
we have over 2,000 students. So it's like just trying to make
Wow.
sure we're running. Yeah, we all these projects are just making oversight and stuff like that, and making sure things are running smoothly.
Great. Um, so here's a let me put it like this. So let's say I have a student, and this could be for animation or for, I guess, my post-production class. Like, let's say I have a student who's done basics of animation, 12 principles, intro level, or maybe they've taken my After Effects. It's like, okay, here's some basic video editing or basic, understanding of motion graphics. And they go, I took this class and now I'm kind of really interested. Like but they're at a community college, so, or whatever. What would I'm not saying they can't go to an art school, but they're not there yet. What would your advice be? It doesn't have to necessarily be education like a school, but like, what would your advice be for next steps for them?
Well, if it's possible, I would start creating. I mean, you
Okay.
can do that, and especially if it's an animation, relatively on a, if you have the software, and there's so much software that's free these days
Sure.
that, and teaching yourself how to do some stuff. I know that that can be hard sometimes. That's why school is so great because you get to be kind of pushed to create, and it's like you have that milestones on those check-ins and all
Right.
that. But if you've got the foundation there, which it sounds like you do from the student that you're explaining, then it's more of like, well, if this interests you, then keep moving forward and start creating and make things that are small. I mean, these days, social media, which is above me, you know what I mean? Like luckily I got in before I had to do, yeah, but
Right.
when you're good at it. And I think
Sure.
students that you probably know are really good at it and good at getting their stuff. So I have had students that have got jobs like on Tuca and Birdie because they show, like
Posted stuff on their
they
social media.
posted something, they tagged somebody, they just
Right.
know how to get out there and do that. And it's like, yeah, showcase yourself. And you can make very small, um, I mean, that's what people want these days. We don't need a 5 minute, 10 minute. Here, make that's the size of the films I make. But you know what I mean? Like the longer films, but
Right.
I'd make them for a little bit different, but you can make shorter things so it's not like you were working on something for 2 years. You know what I mean?
Right.
Instead, you're working on something for 2 days and now you post it and you just keep making things and that's how you get better. And that's
Sure.
also how you find your voice. Like
Right.
I think of the filmmaker I was 15 years ago and 20 years ago, and I had to have things happen to me and I had to try things out and life experiences and, to become who I am now. And not that that was any different or that was better or whatever, but it's just
Sure.
like, that's part of life, right?
Well, I like what you say, where it's like, yeah, I'm always a fan of always be doing. Like, I think that's as good as any teacher, as good as I or you can be as a teacher. It's like you're going to learn so much by just literally trying
Yeah.
to do it and then running into roadblocks and then like, all right, how do we fix this problem or try to solve this problem? And also, like you said, that like, things always kind of evolve, people's personal styles, but also like literally the technology is
Yeah.
changing in terms of how people communicate with video or animation and what platforms there are and you know so yeah, it's interesting. um Here's a question. This is the one I usually leave with people, you can answer it however you want. It can be from an artistic point of view or like an industry point of view or whatever
Yeah.
you want to. There's no wrong answer. Where do you see the future of animation or the future of filmmaking? Because I know right now we're kind of in this interesting kind of
Yeah.
crossroads, and it's like, and you don't have to, it doesn't have to be from an industry point of view. It could just be,
Yeah.
what does that mean artistically or whatever. But
I think there is still that, want, I mean, like the same thing I was telling you when I first started is like, I just wanted to go to the movie store and watch something. That's how I
right,
did it. That's how I
yeah,
did it.
yeah,
Now people are on their phones and they
sure,
process it and I mean, I'm watching my kids and what they watch. I'm talking about my little kids that
right,
I'm a mom. And so it's like my daughter loves watching people play with dolls. And I mean, like,
sure,
why are we playing, but then she'll go play with dolls, but then she watches other people that do. I mean, it's just a really interesting, it evolves and we have to evolve with it in a way
right,
because our audience is our audience. And funny enough, we change with how we process things and how we watch things. So I think we have to continue to be aware that, remember when I first started, I made things on film. And then I
Sure.
started making
Like
things
actual
digitally.
film? Like you did you
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice. Yeah, yeah, I
So
remember
yeah,
that.
so and then I remember editing deck to deck and started,
Right?
that's really back before my
Yeah,
film
yeah.
days. And so that's how I first learned to edit. And so it's just, I remember, then you get to Media 100, and then you get to Avid, and then you get to find,
Right.
like you just evolve. But it's the thirst and the want for stuff to take in, it's still there. That hasn't changed. So it's how we sometimes have to showcase our art, and we have to think in different ways. That's why I'm like, I've had to have all this time to even be part of the world to see,
Right,
okay, how do
right.
I want to involve? How do people want, what are the stories that I want to tell? So I don't know if I answered your question, but that's kind of just a bigger, yeah, I think there's going to be art. There's going to be people that want to watch stuff.
Sure.
It's just we have to adapt with it if we want. Well, here's one question I always ask my students. Who's your audience? And your
Sure.
audience can be two people. If it's your mom
Right.
and dad, or if you can make whatever you want. But if your audience, like you have to, if you want specific audiences, then you have to be.
Well, as I always say, like the more things change, the more they stay the same. I mean, you and I are kind of probably roughly the same age. And it's like when you and I were young, people used to channel flip and you just
Oh
sit
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now that's what essentially TikTok is.
Yeah.
It's things
Yeah.
just kind of come, you don't know what's going to happen, and then it goes away and you
Sure.
go to the next. And like it's,
Yeah.
I mean, the technology literally changes, but it's like the concept of like rapid moving, short
Mhm.
story
Yeah.
looking for somewhere weird reaction and then you move on to the next thing. I mean, like there's always humans want that, right? Or, and whether, the technology changes again and it's whatever, but it's still that's what it is, right? It's like
Sure.
humans wanting to consume this entertainment of some form and so I don't know. The more things change, the more they stay the same.
The more they stay the same.
At least
Yeah.
I feel that way.
Yeah. No, I could definitely see it. I remember probably 10 years ago, one of my films, it's called Speed Dating. So I think it's 11 or 12 minutes. So it's on
Uh,
the longer animated side. But I had a company reach out and said, "Hey, then it was kind of early social media, or not, I mean, not early, so like 10 years ago, but they wanted
right.
to cut it up and like
Okay.
release it and set you thing." And that's kind of what's happening these days, like little
Was
things.
it
But
Quibi?
no, it wasn't Quibi. I can't
Okay.
remember what it was
Okay.
called. And I was like,
Interesting.
why would you want to do that? Like, why would people
Yeah.
wait for the next 45 seconds, the next 45 seconds?
Right.
And maybe that's why it didn't, I don't know. But I thought it was an interesting idea. And you kind of see that in weird ways where they're like part two now, when you're watching
Right. Yeah.
Instagram or a TikTok and they're like part three. And you're like, gosh darn it, I need to know what happens in part three.
Oh, you
So
mean like a cliffhanger?
yeah. So it's like you
Like
you
we've been
actually do
doing
show it.
since serials since like the
Yeah. And
1930s,
so,
you know.
but I just think it's interesting how it evolves, how
Yeah.
you see little bits of it. And for some reason that didn't work. But I'm wondering why some of this other stuff. So it's just interesting.
All right. Well, I think do you have any parting advice for my students at all? You don't have
Um,
to if you don't want to,
no,
but
I
I don't
think
want
it's
to put people on the spot like they have to say something poetic or something, but
no, I
uh,
think it's great that you do this. And I think just the fact that if there are some of the students in your class that are like, I really like this. That's great. That's like something that everybody always like they find something they enjoy, and you can keep going. You can go as deep as you want with this, right? Like you can make it for yourself and just do fun things, or you can, work in the industry or create things on an independent scale. So it's fun. It's fun making, I think it's even when you're making things that mean something to you. So
all right. Well, I think that's a good place to kind of end our conversation. Where can my students find more of your work, like a website or social media,
yeah,
anything?
I do need to update my website, but it's meghanartist.com.
Okay.
And I have a Vimeo page, but it's
Okay.
MEGHANNARTES
Wonderful.
.com. And you can watch some of my latest, a lot of my animations are on there, but so
Great. All right. Well, we appreciate your time and you speaking with us today.
thanks, David. Appreciate it.
Thank you.